Stu Peters, thank you for joining me in the trenches.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I enjoyed our discussion on my program, a couple of weeks ago, and you asked me to be here. I couldn't be happier. I'd love to spread my message and the truth anywhere that I'm invited. So
I always use the metaphorical trenches because we're speaking about an information war, but we really are in an information war, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're in an information war, moreover, we're in a spiritual war. We're in a war for the battle of the souls of our children, for the fabric of our country, its culture, for any sense of normalcy in any country, really, anywhere where people just want to indigenously occupy their lands as they were supposed to, where their heritage is, where their culture is, where their ancestry was, to their native homelands. There's targets that are painted on that sense of normalcy. And the crosshairs are directly over the nuclear family. They're directly over moral uprightness, spiritual faith, integrity, values, morals. And then these people, the enemy, they look to subvert that by infiltration, maybe quietly overt attacks, kinetic warfare, bombs, blood, burying people, bioweapons, propaganda, pornography and pedophilia just aired unrelentingly all over every one of your kids' platforms, whether it's Netflix or on Amazon. It's in their schools, it's on their Chromebooks, it's in the school libraries in physical form, brick and mortar, on the bookshelves. So yeah, I mean, this is really an all-encompassing spiritual war that includes an informational aspect to it, which I think is, that's where I'm on the front lines. That's where we fight. We fight in the information war, but also we're very locked in and we're very in tune to the spiritual aspect of all of this, which is, I think, what makes us so effective. And in turn, what makes me and my platform one of the biggest targets of the enemy. So they have a big fat crosshairs right now that they're trying to laser paint on me. But, I'm swift like a ninja. And I make moves out before them, and some of them silently. I think it was Lil Wayne that said, real G's move in silence like lasagna. I do that quite a bit, but also, we use messaging as a way to activate people. And I think that that's what they're the most scared of, is that, we're looking for real assassins, metaphorically speaking, of course, real assassins that really don't care about cancel culture. Because if you're really that worried about being canceled, if you're worried about losing your bank account, I can tell you imminently for all of us, that's coming. If you're worried or concerned about, losing your X presence or your Instagram account or your Facebook or whatever, I can tell you unequivocally, that's happening. That's happening to you. It's going to happen to you. It's imminent. It's inevitable. This is going to happen. And so, if you're worried about these things, why don't we instead focus on the source of this, who it is that's waging this war on you and on your people and on your country and on your culture and on your history? Why don't we instead turn and go on the offensive and say, hey, we see this imminent attack coming. And right now we can use several examples of who's been targeted. I'm one of them. Just use me, for example. Right now it's Stu, but I see this coming my way. So I better engage right now, and all of us better engage. And we better not really care too much or put too much stock in the importance of our online presence on X or Instagram and whether or not we keep our accounts, because what we should be worried about is whether or not our child's, innocence is murdered, whether our child is physically murdered or groomed for rape and molestation. Maybe we should start worrying about the things that actually matter. And I think that's where we're winning right now in the information aspect of the spiritual warfare.
When would you say you kind of took your first red pill? When did you have a Damascus moment for the first time?
I think it was working as a bounty hunter during George Floyd, because I was there. I was in Minneapolis. I mean, where he died is just blocks away from our studio. I didn't have a studio. At the time, I wasn't thinking about being a podcaster. I wasn't thinking about being an internet personality or a media personality or whatever you want to call what it is that we do. I wasn't expecting to be in a war at this level. But, my history was in radio. So when I was 18 years old, I started working for Clear Channel Radio. And, I was an intern when I was like 17 years old. I begged a guy called Tony Fly, who's now on Sirius XM. He's on like the Hits 1 channel. And I was begging him. I literally sat outside of Butler Square, downtown Minneapolis. That's where the old Clear Channel, KDWB studios were. They're not there anymore. They're in some like suburb in some little closet somewhere. It's really bad what's happened to radio, actually. Radio's gone away. But then there was like this nostalgic, it was very important. FM radio was very important because it wasn't just like contemporary hits radio or CHR format radio or pop or rock or alternative or whatever. The jock, the personality actually had a lot to do with, the direction of the messaging, whether or not he could make a girl laugh while she's on the phone and then perfectly punch that timeline to go into the commercial break or coming out of it and into a song. And so jocks take a lot of pride in doing that. Tony Fly always ran what I would refer to and what those in the industry would refer to as a tight board. He ran a tight board. He had the punchlines. He knew what to say. He knew how to get the girl laughing. He knew how to really clown on the dude on the phone and get people laughing at the dude and then slam him right before commercial break to keep people interested in coming back out of commercial, which means that you're retaining them through the break. And that means more people are buying. Clear Channel is happy with their ROI, and the investors are happy, so they stay on board. It's a big kind of thing that works together, but the jock is centric to everything. The personality is extremely important. That's why morning show guys get paid so much, because they're literally there just talking for 4 hours. Well, if you're not interesting enough to have content for 4 hours, well, then you're out of here. And so Dave Ryan was the morning show guy then. I think he still is now. I don't know. But I used to sit outside the radio station. And I finally got picked up off of the curb, and he was like, you know what, if you'll just shut up, just come on in, get out of the rain or snow or whatever it was doing that day. Just answer my phones. Just stay out of my way. Just don't talk to me. I don't want to hear what you have to say. I don't want to hear about music. Radio doesn't work that way. We don't actually take requests. I started to learn a lot at that point. So at that point, I started to learn how to use my voice, how to be confident with a microphone, not be scared of public speaking, engaging with people. I was more outgoing, I would say, than most of the people, of my age or at my school or whatever. Growing up, I was always the extrovert. I was always the guy that wanted to know everything that was going on and, kind of take in and process all of that information. Well, then I became, after doing rap music, which also was a really big eye opener for me, after doing that and after doing, various things as a mortgage lender and things like that, then I got into bounty hunting. And I did that for 15 years, which worked hand in glove with the radio broadcasting and the mortgage lending, because you're running background reports and you're looking at people to qualify them per underwriting guidelines. And then, of course, with the extroverted ways and kind of just being fearless about speaking the truth, speaking my mind, speaking to one person, speaking to a superior, speaking to a large group of people. It didn't matter. Just speaking in general, I love it. I don't hate it. I'm not scared of it. It doesn't make me nervous. I actually just love speaking. I love speaking to and with people, and I love hearing other people's perspectives. Well, bounty hunting gave me that don't trust anybody, process and vet everything that you hear mentality, because, you have 75, 80-year-old grandmas in the hood lying about not seeing their grandson for the last 7 months when he's actually hiding in the dryer in her laundry room. And you tend to want to believe her because she seems to be a nice, sweet little old lady, but you can't trust that bitch. She should have been in the dryer, and we should have pushed start right alongside of her grandson, actually. But these are the types of things that you learn. And so now where I am, you combine all of that stuff together, and it's very obvious that God had me in training for this exact moment. And so it was the George Floyd thing, really, that was my first big red pill, because honestly, I was just a normie. I was a conservative. I was a Republican. I was a Trump supporter. I was, very pro-police, very pro-military, very pro-marriage, have kids, 2.2 kids and a dog, whatever it was, white picket fences. I wanted to live in like the 1950s nostalgic America. And I had an idea in my head of what exactly that looked like. And I'm a Christian, and I was going to church every Sunday, and I was involved in my church. And I didn't really catch up with the Schofield doctrine. We can talk a little bit about that as well. But the kind of the subjugation of the church, which is a huge target of the enemy, by the way, and it's been very successful for them. And so when I saw firsthand what was going on with George Floyd, and then I saw what the media was reporting about all of this stuff, I was like, well, wait a minute. This is like a concerted and like with a forethought, planned and thought out, very well implemented and polished plot, like a scheme. Like, this is a really big deal. There's pallets of bricks showing up in my city. randomly just being placed everywhere. All over, like, what is going on? And then I'm watching the news, and then I'm watching busloads of rioters and agitators and protesters show up, and I'm going, this is not like an organic uprising. This is a coup. Like, this is intentionally placed violence in strategic locations in our country. And the press, from the local press affiliates to, you know, the mainstream cable news broadcast and major news networks, are all parroting the same exact things almost verbatim. And it didn't matter if you were watching CNN or the Fox News channel, if you were a conservative or a liberal, a Republican or a Democrat. None of that mattered suddenly. They were all saying the exact same thing. And all of it was completely false and fabricated. So I think that was my biggest red pill right away. And then I just kind of started, you know, like telling the truth to an audience of 7 people on Facebook, and it blew up and it turned into whatever, the Stu Peters show. And then along came COVID, of course, this novel coronavirus that nobody knew anything about. Chinamen were dropping dead. You learn that's all fake lies, propaganda videos. You know, they're just like keeling over in the street. And I'm like, hold on a second. A bat did not have sex with a pangolin and take a shit over some soup at a wet market. There's a lot more to this. And that's kind of where I guess you would say the explosion of prominence on the media landscape kind of took place. That's where, you know, people started to, like, Stu Peters became more of a household name. And then, of course, you know, I got involved with films, and I got involved with the growth of the network, and then started really trying to find the source of all of this, whether it was, you know, our elections being meddled in and fake and gay and rigged and stolen, or whether it was COVID-19 and other pandemics and fake viruses making their way your direction, or bioweapons that are literally concocted at level 4 bioweapons labs and then presented to you as a vaccine so that you'll inject yourself. And then they use the media to prop up and to hype the fear amongst the population that gets them to go and do things that under normal circumstances people would never do. But fear is the one emotion. Fear is the one energy, along with sex. Sexual energy is right up there, maybe even more so than fear, that will drive people to do things that normally they would never do. And that's why you have these easily blackmailed, compromised, pedophilic, you know, like lawmakers in our government, because they use sex, that energy, to target them. They'll use money to target these people. They'll use fear to target these people. Well, now we have you on tape doing what you really enjoy doing. And so when you start to look at the source of the George Floyd stuff and the agitators and Antifa and Black Lives Matter and this popular sort of grassroots uprising of people that actually care about blacks, and you realize that actually, no, that's all fake. And then you realize the reasons why they would want that to happen in cities like Minneapolis or Portland, which I think is still burning on fire. It's a shithole of America. You know, Detroit, Philly, like all of these places, it's really important to have everything on fire, and women being raped and people being assassinated and cops being targeted for murder just because they were cops, and like just complete and like the defund movement was really big as well. You know, like, we're going to take money away from those that we charge with protecting you, but we will leave specialized units available in June to protect sodomites and pedophiles who are marching up and down your street half naked, rubbing their genitals in your kid's face. We're not going to take them to jail and have them prosecuted or arrest them for suspicion of lewd and lascivious acts involving a minor child, or even worse, more appropriately, criminal sexual conduct. Instead, we're going to take you to jail if you protest against them. We're going to protect these pedophiles and rapists that are rubbing their dick and balls in your kids' faces right out in the wide open, and there's nothing that you can do about it, where I would advocate for taking the parents to jail just for bringing them into that environment in the first place, because it's literally hell on earth. It's Weimar 2.0. The degeneracy is unbelievable. But all of this comes as a result, I would say, of just me in real life catching the media lying blatantly and causing the unnecessary and immediate and tragic, a lot of times very painful death of people that I love and care about, my fellow white Christian Americans, and at a very early age. They're killing us. They're doing it on purpose. They get off on it. They get paid to do it. They sell out their own souls for dirt cheap, and then they put ours on the auction block and think that they are the arbiters of who gets to live today and who should die. And so that's why I'm in full on war mode.
You said earlier that rap was an eye opener.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, for me, first of all, the first eye opener was there are a lot of very talentless people that are propped up and promoted as stars and talented people. And their lyrics are garbage and their flow is BS. And, just speaking of rap here, but singers too. I mean, you get people that can't even sing and they use auto-tune. And it's like a computer singing at me. I can do that in my living room. I can sound like T-Pain. And I'm not knocking T-Pain if you know who he is, because that guy can actually blow. T-Pain can actually sing. So T-Pain is actually talented. I don't know if he's a writer. I don't know if he's a lyricist. But that guy, I have heard him sing in person, in real life. That guy can sing. But you have all these other like rappers and singers that are using computer programs like Pro Tools, and they can make themselves sound fantastic, which is why actually, and everybody can relate to this, because you've been to a concert where you're like, ugh, that was my favorite artist, but you go there and you listen to him and you're like, damn, I don't know if it was the audio, I don't know if it was the building, I don't know if it was the acoustics, but something about this was really terrible, and they're actually garbage. They're not good performers. They're out of breath. They can't climb the speakers like you see them doing in music videos. This is all fake and gay as well. So I think my first awakening just in the music industry in general was that these people are very talentless. And then the record label will stack you up against these talentless people, these fame seekers who are very easily manipulated and controlled because they are lured again by sex and money and drugs and alcohol and all of the sinful addictions of the West. And they'll take these people, and if they are moldable, meaning that if they will do exactly what it is that Def Jam or Capitol Records or Elektra or any of these other various record labels want them to do, want them to say, want them to write, the way that they want to sing it, how they want them to perform, what they should say in public, if they will do all of those things in exchange for recoupable money, which means the money isn't even yours, it actually belongs to the label. The big house that the rapper lives in, that's not his, that belongs to Def Jam. All the jewelry that the rapper is wearing, that doesn't belong to him, that belongs to Live Nation. All of the cash that the rapper is throwing around, that's owed to the record label. So literally, he sold his soul and doesn't even have rights to his own likeness or name. Can't go now out and using his own name to earn a living anywhere else, because Def Jam or Live Nation or Elektra or Capitol or Universal, whoever it is, Sony Music Group, they all make their money first. They recoup 100% of their investments. Well, their investments include the cash upfront advances. The investments include every line item on their contract. The investments include the houses and the cars and the jewelry and all of that stuff. So you're paying all of that stuff back while you're getting quote unquote nigger rich, because these guys don't care. They're rich right now in the moment, not looking with a forethought at the future. They don't care about planning for a family and having grandkids or leaving a legacy. They care about being rich right now and flaunting it on television. They believe in being rich right now and going to the nightclub and smoking their weed and blowing it in the air. They care right now about having sex with that girl or whatever girl that they choose. They care about driving fast. They care about screaming at cops. They care about having a bad boy image. And then that ends up, it ends them up, under the care of somebody like Diddy, who we all know was run by Clive Davis, who we all know Bad Boy Records, and this whole Clive Davis deal was deeply entrenched and tied to Israeli operatives like Mossad and Jeffrey Epstein. It's the same playbook over and over again. Now, for me in the music industry, I never got to that level. Full disclosure, I was invited to a Diddy white party. That's what they used to call them in the day, these freak-offs that we're now hearing so much about. I think that back in the day, they called them a white party. Everybody all wore white. That's what you wore. You wore all white. And I was invited to one of these. I was actually in, where was I? I was in Fort Lauderdale because I was with Plies. This was a rapper that was coming up that actually did a song with T-Pain against Plies' wishes. He didn't want to do one, but the label made him do one because they wanted him to be more mainstream. And Plies was actually, as retarded as he sounds like a monkey in an orangutan, he actually had good words. You just couldn't understand what was coming out of his mouth because he was putting on this ghetto front. But I was there opening for somebody. Plies was there. T-Pain was like on his way to, or was in an adjacent room at the studio. I've been in the studio with guys like Suge Knight before. That's a whole nother story. Corrupt, DMX, Ludacris, Jay-Z, Redman, Method Man, all these people. I've been in the studio with these people. I was young and I never suspected that there was something super deep and diabolical and cynical and sexually, demonic about these people, because that's not really what we were doing. We were in the lab creating music. I did see guns. I did see drugs, of course, all of the alcohol and the parties and all of that shit. You see all of that. I stayed away from it. Thank God. I never did any hard drugs. I smoked some weed. I drank a lot of alcohol, which I don't anymore because alcohol is dumb and gay. But, so I was never really a part of that in the music industry, but I was really awakened to, I guess, how everything is just really fake, and how they will threaten to shelf you, which they did to me. They said, well, we're just going to take all the money out of your budget, and what's already there is owed in the form of recoupable funds. And we're not going to invest anything more in your project, and we're not going to put your album out. So what we'll do instead is we'll withdraw the remaining portion of the budget that was allocated to the focus project, and we'll invest it into our heavy hitters. And by heavy hitters, what they mean is easily manipulated, easy to control Shabbos goys that'll run around like little wind-up dolls doing and saying whatever it is that their Jewish handler tells them to say and do. So that was my big awakening in the music industry. And also the degeneracy, I guess, was really wearing on me. And not even necessarily in the form of like physical parties and shit like that, although be it that was something to see, but really in the form of being pressured by A&Rs and record label executives to write about things that were degenerate, that you need to push more mainstream content with more swear words and talk less about what your mission is and talk less about your convictions and your faith. People don't care about that. They want to hear more about what drugs you're smoking or injecting, and they want to hear more about, even if you're not, that's fine, but we want you to talk about that. And looking back at it now, you realize that, all these thug rapper niggers, as they're called, I guess, all of these thug rapper NFL football players, NBA basketball players, all of these music writers, these famous people that are rich wearing the diamonds, who have reality television shows that feature them rolling around in vehicles that, probably cost more than my home. They're all being controlled by Jews. They're all being used as foot soldiers to infiltrate the psyche of the white Christian male growing up in America and give him this altered and completely manufactured out of whole cloth idea of what it looks like to be successful, or what it requires of you to be famous or accepted in real life. And that's where you have like kids running around sagging their pants below their asses. This is where you have like teenagers running around with guns shooting at each other for no reason at all whatsoever, other than block domination and gang set control of certain territories of where you're going to move drugs and pimp hoes. And I was just like blown away by that these groups of people will go to war with one another inside of their own groups. Black on black crime. Take a look at it if you don't believe me. And then we'll go outside of their own ethnic or religious or spiritual or gang set affiliations or record labels or whatever faction of their tribe they're in. So like you have all blacks, and then you have factions of blacks, because these blacks will war with each other. And then they'll go outside of that and they'll start targeting whites who also are not Jewish, who Jews also control, using the same manipulative tactics and brainwashing, propagandizing, and programming efforts that they use our media and our music and our movies and Hollywood and all of these apparatus. They use all of that as mind control, which they've been able to really uptick in recent times because of the information flow and how quickly it moves. I mean, everybody's got a smartphone. Everybody can go to X, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram, Reels. All of this very short content that's meant to capture the immediate attention and then move on to the next thing, which is equally, if not more, degenerate and falls off the cliff into, subversion. And ultimately, it all leads to death, whether it's death by overdose or death by alcoholism or death by suicide due to depression or the transgender agenda. How many of these trannies are now killing themselves because they realize what they've done? Veterans that have fought in these wars, hundreds of years of senseless wars, decade after decade, brothers' wars. You have Ukrainians now killing Russians. You have Russians killing Russians, ethnic Russians killing ethnic Russians, Orthodox Christians killing Orthodox Christians using unmanned piloted drones, kamikazes in open fields, looking at their brother, taunting him on a screen, and then ending his life, murdering him savagely. And then these videos uploaded to social media where people can watch them in real time in 4K like it's a video game. Same as how you're watching the genocide and ethnic cleansing and the mass murder of hundreds of thousands of innocent women and children in Gaza, in Lebanon, in the West Bank, in Syria, all of those years in Iraq and Afghanistan, Fallujah, people, Marines cutting people, their entire family to pieces with bullet spray, murdering their dogs, anything with a pulse. General Mad Dog Mattis said had to die. And we all cheered it on. We all cheered it on because we were conservatives. We all cheered it on because we were Republicans, and we weren't going to put up with this bullshit from these sand niggers, right? Toby Keith wrote a song about dropping a bomb. We'll put a boot in your ass. That's the American way. We're going to go to war. George Bush stood there at ground zero and told the whole world about how all these people would hear from all of us very soon. We were told that we had to bring the fight to them before they brought it to American soil, which apparently they already had because our towers just fell and nobody was paying attention to that little building 7 over there. These things were just dustified. So apparently they'd already brought that attack, but needless to say, nobody cared. They wanted retaliation. They wanted redemption. They wanted justice, and they didn't care what it took. And so they went and signed up. Mass droves of people went and signed up to be enlisted in the Army and the Navy and the Air Force and the Marine Corps and the Coast Guard and Space Force and all of this other. People went and they just were like flooding the recruitment lines. You could not keep people at high school. They were leaving early to go and enlist. You had people cheering on this war effort. And then Saddam Hussein was hanged on an international stage in front of an international audience for ties to Al-Qaeda and for weapons of mass destruction, neither of which ever existed. They were made up out of whole cloth, and they were complete lies. And then you start to look into Afghanistan, and you start to look into the Ukraine proxy war being fought by the United States via NATO against Russia because they want regime change there, just like they did with Saddam Hussein, just like they did with Bashar al-Assad, just like they did with Muammar Gaddafi, and just like they did with Adolf Hitler. All of these people have one thing in common. They pushed back against the criminal, satanic Rothschild central banking cabal, and they wanted to go their own way. They wanted out of that. They wanted to protect their people. They were nationalists who were looking out for the interests of their country and their people and their borders, and they didn't give a damn about what was going on outside of them. And anything that pushed its way their direction, that threatened the sovereignty of their borders or their people or their nation or their peace, would be confronted with violence. And they didn't like that. So they had to control it all. So they had to go buy this piece of land. They had to call it Israel. They had to get control of the minds of 2.4 billion people on planet Earth. 1.9 billion, I believe, identify as Catholics, but 2.4 identify as Christians. And they had to gain control of their mind. This is Israel. Don't question it. Don't ask questions about it. Don't criticize it, because these are God's chosen people. And it was very successful. And so this whole thing being unraveled right before my eyes, and then, of course, October 7th helped to speed all of those things up, but really just talking to experts over and over, really base chads that actually know what the fuck it is that's going on out here and are willing and able to articulate that in such a form where it's easy to digest by people who are the hardest nuts to crack. And those would be your boomers. Those would be your non-denominational Protestant, evangelical, or Catholic Christians whose faith in church has been subverted and is now occupied by people who still consume and believe what their TV tells them to do, who to vote for, the Fox News channel. I'm a conservative. I watch Fox. Those guys, I served in the military. I pay my taxes. I do my part. Those guys. Actually, ironically, the most patriotic thing that you could do is to not pay your taxes and tell the federal government to go fuck itself. But I digress. These people are the hardest nuts to crack. You can't confront a conservative Christian ideologue who has been propagandized and programmed and brainwashed for 6, 7, even 8 decades by the very same people, and then go tell them that these people are responsible for waging that attack on them. They're the reason why they were in Fallujah cutting to pieces little children. They're the reason why, and for no reason whatsoever. These are the people that actually put you up to killing your own brothers in that empty field with a drone like a video game on a screen when you blew them up with a kamikaze, even though you're both Orthodox Christian ethnic Russians. Doesn't matter. These are the people responsible for doing that while you go home with your chest out, pumping on it, saying, I did my service. I served my country. Did you? Did you really? Whose country exactly did you serve by doing any of the aforementioned? And when you ask them that question, they have a hard time with it. And when they have a hard time, their response is visceral. Most of the time, they will have this vitriolic, like explosive reaction of anger where they just kind of come at you like, in that moment of defense. But I think that largely the white pill is that a lot of these veterans, they're starting to get it. And recently we drew some attention to that by my threatened appearance in Norfolk, Virginia at the USS Liberty 58th annual reunion event. And their ship obviously was torpedoed and napalmed and strafed with machine gun fire. International war crimes were committed when they got in their lifeboats, and these Jews came back around. The Israeli fighter jets came back around to finish off the job. They didn't want any survivors there. But me going to Norfolk, Virginia was a terrorist act. Me being there and speaking words was a terrorist act. Never mind the fact that the reason why I was there was because of the act of war that was waged against our country by Jews on June 8th, 1967. That's factual. That came less than 4 years after, by the way, the same people had their fingerprints all over the open-air targeted assassination and murder of our sitting president, JFK. That came before 9/11. There's a lot of atrocities that we can point to, and they all go back to the same tribe. They all go back to the same nation state. They all go back to the same people. And when you say that, it's anti-Semitic. And anti-Semitic means we have to shut that down by any means necessary, because if the truth ever gets out about us, we will have no safe place to hide.
Stu, I don't think you're anti-Semitic. I mean, from what I can tell, you have nothing against Arabs.
No. Look, here's the deal. I don't want Arabs here in my country. I don't want Muslims here. But why are they here? Well, they're here because we displaced them. It turns out that the United States and the military-industrial complex and the American war empire, alongside the Israeli genocide war machine, they're responsible for bringing these people here with U.S. taxpayer dollars by bombing the shit out of them relentlessly. And over again, we target them and we force them out by annexing their native homelands at the end of a gun barrel and under the threat of the rape of their women and children and the death of their entire family and the burning of their home and, life imprisonment at Siberia or something where they'll do hard labor, hauling sequoia logs for the rest of their life. And nobody wants that, obviously. So, I just want my country to be for my country and your country to be for your country and for our people to prosper. And I'll cheer on your prosperity, but I'll just do it from here and you just do it from there. But no, I don't have anything against Muslims. As a matter of fact, I would say that there is a uniquely ironic collaboration, or at least interim temporary partnership happening between Christians and Muslims right now, because both of us have identified a common enemy that we rightly point out presents the most imminent threat to humanity. So I'm enjoying that because, Christians, when I say Christians, I mean based Christians. I don't mean these Schofield indoctrinated, lukewarm Christians who, by the way, we need to go and save eventually. We don't have time for that right now, but we need to openly declare war on these fake teachers, these pastors like Greg Locke, these people like John Hagee and Jack Hibbs. We need to declare war on these people, and then we need to come for their flocks after these fake pastors are exposed. We need to come for their flocks and save these people. Because, if 2.4 billion people that identify as Christians were able to get a hold of this and digest the truth and accept this as reality, the nowhere safe to hide thing would probably come to fruition very quickly. These people are evil. These people have done some incredibly demonic and evil, murderous and subversive shit. And very pedophilic, by the way. These people are homosexual pedophiles.
You said dustified. Now, there's a word that very few people will pick up on, and I know exactly what you're referring to. So before I ask you about that term, can you remember what you were doing that day?
Yeah, I was in a recording studio in Los Angeles, California. It was called Enterprise Studios, that proudly boasted that they were one of the last studios in the country to record to 2-inch tape, which provides a much better, obviously, more high quality and crystal clear, warm and full sound than recording directly to digital like Pro Tools or something. Enterprise Studios, I was in there with Rockwilder and Fabulous, actually. And we were recording to 2-inch tape, and it came up on the monitors. And I was not in the vocal booth at the time. I was actually sitting and writing. And there were some engineers working. And I looked up, and there's one of our Trade Center towers on fire on the opposite coast. And then there was breaking news coming out of LA. And the news out of LA was that, look, the attack is probably coming here. Our country is under attack. Every major city, high alerts, all of this stuff. And I'm glued to what's happening in New York. So yeah, I will never forget what happened on that day, where I was, the events of that day. As for me personally, I'll never probably fully understand the reality of what occurred that day. I know who did it. I know who's responsible for it. I know why. But there's a lot of intricacies there and a lot of open questions like, did this person really know that? Did George Bush really know that he was actually a mass murderer carrying out, an act of war on his own soil against his people? Or was he just told, you're going to be here reading these books to these kids? The whole whisper scene that's very famous of the whispering in the ear in front of the kids and the look on George Bush's face. The painting and the image of him playing with the airplanes, the paper airplanes and things like that. All of this stuff is very, very dark and demonic. And there's this predictive programming that takes place, which is very obvious. Are we really not talking about the fact that The Simpsons, many, many years before it actually happened, had Donald Trump depicted in that same suit with that same tie coming down that same escalator and announcing that he was going to run for president? Are we really discounting that as, some kind of QAnon conspiracy theory? How can you? Because it happened. It actually happened. And we all watched it. Why isn't that a conversation that people are having? So when you see things like this happening in movies now, and when you look at The Matrix, for example, which is clearly not a film, it was a documentary. And when you look at these things that are happening and predictive policing, I forget the name of that movie, The Minority Report. And you have, predictive information that you can gather on people because you have chips in their brains. Well, then along comes Neuralink. And then who's propping up Neuralink? Well, this guy who we're all told is the inventor or the mind behind Neuralink that's going to put a chip in your brain. But you're not going to question that because it's Elon Musk. And Elon Musk is a thought leader and a champion. And he's also friends with Donald Trump, who you're never going to question either, by the way. So there's this very, very intricately detailed, very well methodically planned out kind of orchestrated war on humanity that is taking place right now. And if you're a Gentile, if you're a non-Jew, you're a target of that apparatus. You're a target of that war. And as far as the justification is concerned, what is it that you wanted me to clarify?
Why did you say that?
Well,
very few people,
because that's what happened.
Very few people will have picked up on it.
Yeah, that's the truth. Justification is what happened to those towers. Justification is what happens to anything that's hit by a directed energy weapon, for example. It can happen in various different ways. But for anybody who still believes Hawaii, Maui, Lahaina, this is very valuable real estate. This is very valuable land. The wildfires, where do they take place? Hurricane Helene, what's there? The country's or the world's largest lithium deposit? Who went swooping in to gather control of those rare minerals in that lithium deposit? BlackRock, who are they? Larry Fink, who is he? Who are they? They're Jews. They're Israel. They're based and headquartered on Rothschild Boulevard in Tel Aviv. They're a private equity firm that owns more land in the United States than the CCP that Alex Jones tells you that you should be deathly afraid of taking over our country and occupying our government. Excuse me, Alex, but when I look around, I don't see an overrepresentation of Chinamen in our government, okay? I see a bunch of ridiculously embarrassing tiny fucking hats and big hook noses. That's what I see. It's actually like a meme. There's a little Jew man everywhere. Behind every bush, behind every tree, in every corner, there seems to be a little Jew man everywhere you look. I'm not buying this less than 0.2% of the American population narrative. That there's 2-point-something million Jews in America. They like to give us that 6 million number. I heard that's how many people perished in Boulder, Colorado, when some guy with a flamethrower and Molotov cocktails started burning Jews alive in this pogrom, or the real Holocaust, which was happening before our eyes. And then just casually stood around for several minutes, 30 minutes, waiting for the police to come and arrest him while he cheered Free Palestine. Totally organic. I know everybody believes that happened, organically and in a vacuum. But, you have Larry Silverstein saying that they planned the construction of the new trade centers or the new tower, or whatever it was, how he phrased that when he was in Israel giving this speech to a bunch of Jews after 9/11, kind of smirking and laughing about how they had already planned for the construction of the new tower long before anybody knew anything about 9/11 taking place. And, you look at the insurance contracts on those asbestos-ridden buildings that were worth absolutely nothing, and the insurance contracts, which are worth a whole lot of something. And then you just look at Building 7, and it's like, are you really going to believe that 2 airplanes hijacked by Saudis in a plan implemented by an Afghani who's hiding in a cave, whose passports, by the way, are very clearly legible amid all of the rubble and dust and charred everything, but you can find, there's these blue passports you can find. Haven't been bothered, haven't been disturbed, and we can very quickly, within hours, identify every man that was on these planes. There's just so much about the plane, the airplane narrative, and the very short second or fraction of a second that you have this frame by frame slowed down image of this whatever it was hitting the Pentagon or nearly hitting the Pentagon. That's all very, very suspect, and nobody should believe the official Orthodox narrative. But when you learn then all of the motives and all of the details and the dancing Israelis and Larry Silverstein and 4,000 Jews not showing up for work on that day, when you start to learn of all of the irrefutable, circumstantial, plus physical evidence that cannot be argued, and when you can clearly identify exactly who it was that did that, anybody who believes the Orthodox narrative of planes, it's not helping you. And you would be doing yourself a big favor if you go look into dustification as it pertains to 9/11 and listen to some of the people who are talking about the dustified buildings on that day. Talk about how they were dustified, and if thermite was used, or if directed energy weapons were used, or if explosives were used. But I do know this. I do know that Mark Walsh wasn't telling you the truth. I do know that when Mark Walsh, the guy who apparently worked for the Fox News channel, just happened to stumble across a Fox News reporter and his camera, and within seconds of the buildings coming down, he was saying, I watched the whole thing from my apartment with my homosexual Jewish husband. I watched the whole thing from my apartment, and I watched it happen, and the buildings came down because of the unrelenting heat caused by the jet fuel. Like, he had the whole narrative that they would then run with for years and years and years. And he just, like a robot, just regurgitated it perfectly to the Fox News camera to be aired on repeat over and over and over again by every other major broadcast and cable news network. And there it was. You had your narrative. These planes were hijacked by the brown man wearing a towel on his head from Saudi Arabia, as commanded to do so by some Taliban guy in Afghanistan. And for what reason? What was the motive? Well, just because we hate Americans, because we're Muslim and we're evil. We hate Americans. We hate Christians because we're Muslim and we're evil. And that's what we were told to accept. And then you had the whole propaganda campaign throughout Hollywood and through the media and through entertainment and sitcoms and Seinfeld and like all of the usual suspects. So when you look back at it, knowing what I now know, it's frustrating because for so many years, I did not know that, even though it was right in front of my face. And I consider myself to be a pretty highly educated guy, or at least not even highly educated as per the system is concerned. But, a high IQ guy that's a quick study, that quickly processes information. And I'm kind of got a working bullshit meter that's always on full red. And I'm a kind of a human walking lie detector test. And my discernment is like on red alert at all times. So I think that I was really disappointed in myself, and I'm very frustrated now because I sit here knowing what I know, and I tell millions of people every day what I know, and then yet people will turn around and attack me as I'm trying to save them. People will turn around and call me a bigot and a racist, and I'm an anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist, and I'm a radical, extremist, dangerous individual who hates women and hates blacks and hates Muslims and hates Jews and hates everybody. And nobody should listen to me. And that's what these people, that's what they're out here saying, when really, in fact, all I have ever done since this platform launched, ordained by God, is try to save lives. Particularly, I get very, very involved when it comes to saving the lives and protecting the lives of children. You put your hands on our kids, you touch our kids, we kill you. That's my mantra. That's what I will say till they take me to jail for saying it. You touch our kids, we kill you. I think that's a hill that everybody should be able to die on. And it shouldn't matter if you're a Muslim or a Christian. It shouldn't matter if you're black or white or brown or Indian. It shouldn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. You touch our kids, we kill you. Everybody should be interested in protecting our kids, except for the people who would push back on that narrative. And we know who those people are.
Well, this entire conversation, Stu, so far has been about the information war. How do we win it?
I think we are winning it. I think hands down we're winning it. I think that the conversation is indicative of that. If you go and you look on X right now, if you go and you look on the comment sections on Instagram, if you go to Facebook and take a look around, if you go to any of these mainstream platforms that I'm banned or suppressed on, if you go to Rumble, if you go to YouTube, if you just watch the live stream comments, if you look at the chats, if you look in real life at Dave Portnoy's bar in Philadelphia, you'll see signs. Everywhere you look, people are having conversations that just a year ago you would not imagine them having, and they're having them at warp speed and right out in the wide open and at their places of work and in their businesses and in the streets and in bars and at their churches and in their social groups and at their wine tasting clubs. I mean, it's just everywhere. I'm having these conversations at marinas. I'm having these conversations on the golf course. I sponsored this golf tournament that my kid was involved with. And I'm on the golf course and I'm hearing from another one of these dads. You know, I'm hearing it in salons where there's like boomer aged females that are chatterboxes gossiping all day long. And as I stroll through to buy a gift card for my lady to get a massage, I'm being pulled aside and this woman is like 58 years old and she's like, "Oh my God, how about these fucking Jews?" And I'm just looking at her like, I cannot believe that this is happening. So I think that there's a lack of understanding. I think that there's a need for a broader, more in-depth conversation to continue and more education to take place. But my job here is to make people aware at the surface level so that they can then go and do their own research. That's my job. I'm not asking you to believe everything I say. I don't want to be the arbiter of everything that's right, the arbiter of truth and false, or the arbiter of life and death. I'm not God. But I am a leader. And it's my job to show you the truth. It's my job to tell you the truth. And it's my job to be as probably diplomatically and politically incorrect as possible, because I'm not going to placate my audience to their feelings. They should be shocked that this is happening. You should be upset that this is going on. And so I think that we win by putting pressure on those that claim to be in some sort of a truth-telling position in their capacity, whatever it is, whether it's Alex Jones at InfoWars. We continue to clown him and expose him every time he lies overtly to protect subversives. You know, we go after people and hold them accountable. People who will feel the pressure, you know, people who will understand and actually care if their name has the word integrity attached to it or not. These people are still around, but they're just scared. They're scared to be canceled. Where this whole conversation started with Instagram and Facebook and their presence online or their podcast or their conversation digitally, if they're afraid that that's going to discontinue because they go here, by not going there, you're ensuring that that's encapsulated in your future. You're ensuring that that's what your destiny is going to be, because without a fight and without a unified front, a guy like me is really easy to pick off because I'm out on an island and I'm easily targeted, and you can just seek me and destroy me with little to no resistance at all whatsoever. But when I have an army alongside of me, that makes me a whole lot more difficult to target. And I do. And that's why they haven't been able to finish me off. And that's why they continue to come for me. But as they come for me, they continue to provide more media coverage that points more people who never knew what a Stu Peters was directly to my nightly broadcast, where they then get a crash course almost every night on who it is that's really targeting them for destruction and rape and pedophilia with their children and grooming and molestation and financial and economic subversion and overtaking and theft, and who took our gold and why we use a dollar and fiat currencies versus cryptocurrencies and what a currency is backed by. And what about the papacy? What about the Pope? And who does the Pope serve? And what's the history of Catholicism? And how has their church been subverted? And they just, like any given day, they tune in and they start hearing myself opining on this and experts weighing in who are very well articulated. And they go, well, wait a second. And then they go and they look a little bit. And if they search beyond Google, they find the truth. And that opens the door. And stories like the USS Liberty is a really good one that I have found for veterans specifically, because veterans don't know that. They're not taught that in Norfolk, Virginia when they're going through naval school. They're not taught about who targeted the USS Liberty. They hear about other ships being attacked, but not the Liberty. You know, and at school, you don't learn about these attacks truthfully. You don't learn about the USS Liberty at all, but you don't learn about 9/11 truthfully. I would imagine. I was already out of school, but I'm sure that, you know, your kids' college or high school or even middle school education surrounding the events of 9/11, they're not going to match up. They're going to be the official orthodox, safe and effective vaccine narrative that had your kid in a face muzzle, you know, a bacteria-ridden, oxygen-inhibiting mask, and you were told that that was somehow healthy and protecting them, and that you had to go and get a vaccine, not for yourself, but you had to get a vaccine for other people because you injecting yourself is going to help me. Like literally science and medicine and everything that we know to be true just by basic logic was completely flipped over on its head upside down. And people swallowed the pill. They took it. They believed it. They were desperate. And what was controlling them? Fear. Just like we talked about at the beginning of this conversation. And so if you know that fear is a controller of all things, and if you know that fear will get people to do things that normally they would not do, then we need to use that. It's our responsibility to scare the shit out of the people that we love and care about. It's our responsibility to do that by showing them the truth about what's rushing its way their direction, about what their life is going to look like if they're not made aware of this information. And that is a very scary place, not only for white Christians, but for humanity as a whole. So I think we're winning. I think that more people are waking up. I think that we need more people to grab a hold of their nut sacks, or in a more politically acceptable way, I guess, to find their testicular fortitude, to find their integrity, to roll their shoulders back, to hold their head up high, to poke their chests out, to get alongside of me, because we need you. We can't do this all by ourselves. And slowly but surely, I'm seeing others take risks. I applaud that, but they just need to go full frontal, because this assault on mankind itself, it's in a full offensive mode, and the trajectory and the rate at which this is happening, like I've known that this has always been the plan. I just didn't expect it to happen this week, and now it's at everybody's front door, and we have to react, and we have to become offensive and force them to react. And when they do react, they make mistakes. But I think that we need to use fear right now, because people rightly should be a little bit nervous and concerned about what's happening. And I don't say fear. I don't say fear as in people should be afraid, because I don't serve a God of fear. I don't serve a God of confusion. I serve a God of truth, and I serve a God of ferocity, and a God who's unafraid of everything and not afraid of anything. And I serve a God who braided his own whip and flipped those tables on those money changer Jews and chased them out of that temple, and who blew up 2 whole cities over this sodomy thing that everybody is celebrating this month during June. So I'm very white-pilled on that front. I think we are winning.
Stu, I know your time is tight.
It is.
So let's come in for a landing. This is a stupid question, but I'm going to do it anyway. How can I follow you?
It's not a stupid question, and I wish tens of millions more would. So thank you for that opportunity. StuPeters.com has everything that you need to know, with all of the links right there. If you're on X, I'm at Real Stu Peters. Yes, there's no blue check mark by my name. That was your guy, Elon, that did that when I pushed back on H-1B Indians invading my country, because I don't like that. He disagrees, so he told me I could go fuck myself in the face out loud, as well as millions of others that are in opposition to the H-1B nonsense. He told you could go fuck yourself in the face. Took my blue check mark, but that's where you'll find me, at Real Stu Peters on X, StuPeters.com. And, you know, here's the deal. In having these conversations, it's very obvious that there is not a overabundance of advertising or sponsors or investors that are rushing our direction and saying, hey, we would love to be featured on this program that's notoriously anti-Semitic and hateful. So they don't come here like they used to. And as a matter of fact, it's cost me millions upon millions of dollars, to the tune of probably $4 to $6 million a year, that used to come into this network that no longer does, because I stood on my principles and my message wouldn't change despite threats of that money leaving. So what we have asked is that people give us $9 a month. And if you go to stewpeters.com and you click on the support subscribe button, it says right there $9 a month or $90 a year. It's literally nothing. But with all of you combined, it means a lot. And even if you're not interested in using Locals as your like social media platform or viewing the show there, just know that that's the only way that we can actually stay on the air and earn a living and accept support right now. It's by giving us $9 a month. So if you're like, well, $9 a month isn't enough, there's also a give once option that's limitless. So you can give us the $1 million that you're dying to give us. And then there's also the fact that you could gift subscriptions. 10 people that you love and care about that you think deserve to hear the truth so that they can then better protect their kids. Gift them 10 annual subscriptions and spend $900. And then it'll be $90 for each one after that every year. So that's what I would ask people to do if they want to follow me. Go to stewpeters.com. Our Twitter is there. The subscribe and support stuff is there. The links to all of our films and projects and upcoming travel. We have a very good news section there where Frankie Stocks, the America's most based journalist, is running around all over the place, giving you the truth. So I appreciate you asking that. But yeah, I would say stewpeters.com, support, subscribe. Rumble, Stew Peters Network. If you just want to watch us on Rumble, we're right there every night. The show right now, we work on some pre-taped segments because we work on kind of a schedule where we have to get with these people at their availability. So we're taping throughout the day. Some of it is live. Most of it is pre-taped throughout that day. And then it's aired in our show at 7 p.m. Eastern or 6 Central. But we are now considering moving toward a fully live broadcast and then switching the time. But our daily broadcast in the soon will be more of a nightly broadcast. And it'll be broadcast live and a lot more interactive. So a lot of things going on. I've got a film project that I'm very deeply entrenched with and involved with that I really can't talk about right now, but people are going to be anticipating that. I would say that everybody, while I'm shilling, should go to spnstore.com and get yourself a physical copy of this film. If you've already seen the film, great. Get 10 copies and hand them to the same 10 people that you bought a gifted membership to stewpeters.com for on Locals, because everybody needs to see this film. And Occupied is a really good entry point for people who have no idea what's going on. If you've got that person in your family who believes none of this stuff about the Holocaust, or none of this stuff about Hitler, none of the stuff about 9/11 or JFK or Gaza that's happening right in front of their eyes. If you can't open their eyes, just have them watch this. And that'll do a really good job, I think. So I think I'm all done shilling now. Just buy all of our products, support us. Just do whatever you can. If we have a product that you want, don't go get it elsewhere. Get it from us, because it keeps us on the air and we're a friendly and we need your support. So maybe it takes an extra day or two for shipping because I'm not Jeff Bezos, but I also don't want to kill you and fuck your kids because I'm not Jeff Bezos.
Stew Peters, thank you for joining me in the trenches.
God bless you.